So, hello and welcome, everybody. Um, I'm Cheatle from the Empyrean Order, representing Brighthaven, and we're doing a little class here on the Deities of Golarion. Just giving a general gist of each of the gods, the core 20. There's actually several hundred deities in Golarion, but we're focused on the core 20, mainly because those are going to be the first 20 in game, and in later classes, I'll talk about the rest of them. It looks like we're going to have 40 or 50 deities here in game eventually. So they're very interesting and they're very crucial for your decision making when it comes to choosing domains, favored weapons, and all the different special attacks that you get as a cleric. And they're also crucial for lore. Just what do you want out of your deity? What does your character want to play, and who do they want to worship? And that can even extend to non-clerics and non-paladins, because you can join these deities as factions when the faction mechanics come out, and it's all very interesting. And we're right now talking about Abadar, so let me get back into this. Abadar is also a great proponent of peace, because he believes that inevitably war will lead to the degradation of trade and eventually the stifling of prosperity for the general public. So in that regard, he advocates caution, careful consideration in all matters, and frowns upon impulsiveness. He believes all these things will lead to the encouragement of your primitive needs. So Abadar discourages dependence on government or any religious institution, believing that wealth and happiness should be achievable by anyone with keen judgment, discipline, and a healthy respect for all sensible, just laws. Now, Abadar has long served as the guardian protector of the First Vault, which is said to be a repository of just everything ever created by mortals, but the exact perfect version of each of those things. He's also credited with guiding the advancement of the demi-human races towards the point where essentially they could establish civilization societies of their own. And he also helped defeat and imprison the rampaging god Rovagog. So now, relationships to other religions and deities. Abadar, as you know, he strives to maintain this peace, this balance, and he wants to be agreeable with the other deities. And he recognizes their influence to be conducive to the further advancement of civilized life. And in particular, he cultivates strong alliances with Iomedae, Iori, Shaylin, Asmodeus, and Ariston. Though, he does have a difference of opinion, and he can conflict with Abadar quite a bit, but he tries to maintain these relationships for the good of mortals, of civilization. Now, Abadar recognizes two of the deities as true enemies to civilization, and that's Rovagog and Lamashtu. The Church of Abadar. Let's talk a little bit about that. The worshippers and clergy and all that. He's primarily worshipped by judges, merchants, lawyers, and aristocrats. And this is kind of interesting because in the context of PFO, we will have aristocrats as a class, and merchants are very much a group of their own. And lawyers and judges could be a possibility with future mechanics. So there's definitely roles within the game that could see Abadar as their patron deity. A lot of people in Golarion worship Abadar in a hopes of attaining wealth and happiness. He is also the object of veneration by the poor and those who have suffered at the hands of others. Basically, they worship him to alleviate their suffering and to help bring justice to them. As a side note, there's actually quite a lot of halflings who worship Abadar because of his association with cities and trade. And because of that, there's a lot of halflings that tend to congregate in larger settlements in Golarion, and they kind of, they worship him because halflings are involved in quite a lot of trade within Golarion. So give you a little last bit of information here. The Knights of Abadar fight against corruption and anarchy. They understand both the letter and the spirit of the law. It's very, very important in Abadarian society. And they often serve as judges in places where the application of law has begun to dissolve. So for all of you people out there that, would like to worship Abadar and also want to participate in PvE and PvP, well, there you go. You got two really good core bits of ideology to fight against corruption and anarchy. Now, on to the next deity. Asmodeus. Asmodeus is the most powerful of the 9 archdevils that inhabit hell. And he's the only one of hell's rulers that are actually a full divine god. Asmodeus is credited with the penning of the contract of creation. And his followers all believe that within this document, there is a hidden means for their patrons' eventual rise to supremacy. Now, Asmodeus has a dozen or more titles. The God Fiend, Lord of Hell, Lord of Darkness, Prince of Hell. He's very, very well known. And to some of you, you might find this actually very interesting but disturbing. He was actually the second being in all of creation. Now, I'll get to that in a second. Asmodeus believes that the strong should rightfully govern the weak. It's very core to his values. And those weak, in turn, owe their masters unwavering obedience. He enjoys negotiations and contracts, especially those that give one of the parties a distinct hidden advantage. It's very key very key to Asmodean negotiation and contract writing. He expects and appreciates flattery during negotiations, but he realizes it's a tactic and even a duty of those inferior positions. Now, his brother, Ahis. Ahis and Asmodeus are the two primeval entities of, not even of the world of Golarion, but of all creation. Now, there's something called the seal, and I won't get into that right now, but the seal spontaneously brought forth life. And the two beings that first came out was Ahis and Asmodeus. And they began as formless motes of energy. Then the seal began to birth the lesser motes, which eventually became deities in their own right. And once that happened, the first deity becomes self-aware. Now, over eons, these lesser motes of energy became aware, and these were all the varying versions of the first gods and the elder gods and so on and so forth. And when Ahis discovered what the seal was, that actually brought into existence speech and knowledge and meaning and discovery. And he named himself, and then he named his brother. And after that point, Ahis and Asmodeus began to band together with the lesser gods and sculpt creation. And they slowly introduced varying concepts of order into reality. They created the planets and the stars and the universe and the fundamental laws that bound all of them together. Then Asmodeus' brother forever changed creation when creating the first mortals. And he did that through discovering the concept of souls and worship. And all the other gods began to follow his example. And then Ahis bestowed upon all mortals free will. And that's what caused the first schism. And Asmodeus believed that mortals were just mere tools. And so Ahis believed in freedom, while Asmodeus believed in servitude. And this caused a massive, massive war between the deities. And basically, Ahis created chaos. And through chaos, destruction was sowed through the heavens. And Ahis believing good came from mortals' free will, absolutely opposed Asmodeus. And this conflict between order and chaos became essentially the never-ending conflict. So, as the story goes on, the clashes between the armies of Ahis and Asmodeus and the eventually Saren Ray of the Empyrean Lords backed Ahis. And eventually the last battle came. and it was a duel, essentially, between Ahis and Asmodeus. When Asmodeus offered his hand in brotherhood to Ahis to sort of mend this disagreement, he performed the very first act of treachery by murdering his brother. But he had such great grief and sympathy for his brother in his final act that he allowed freedom to stand. And in his act, he also created hell as a monument to the old ways of absolute merciless order, and as a warning of what would one day he would make anew for all of creation. And so even Asmodeus can have feelings that you might feel is contrary to his being. Now, his relationships with the other gods are, well, they don't accept any deals with him lightly, because they know the nature of his treachery. But he's an extremely powerful deity and brings a lot of resources to the table. So he's actually very sought after in a sort of counselor capacity, where he gives various insightful information on the current situation. So he's sort of an elder deity that helps other deities. But even in that capacity, Asmodeus regards most of the other faiths with mild amusement, and seeing them as weak and temporary distractions to all the mortal worshippers. Though he does give special consideration for all religions that stress the rule of law. Now, talking a little bit about those that would worship Asmodeus, being lawful evil means that lawful evil, lawful neutral, and neutral evil alignments can support the worship of Asmodeus. His favorite weapon is the mace. His symbol is the red pentagram. Sacred animal is the serpent, and black and red are his colors. His clergy usually dress in clean and orderly red accented black dress. They wear horns and helmets for ceremonies, and he has a huge following in Chelix. Priests are expected to abide by local laws and take sacrifices only from willing victims. The Knights of Asmodeus wear the typical black and red associated with the Dark Prince, and most of them wield spiked maces, and they seek out order to gain power. And some of them call themselves paladins, and just to give their behavior that sheen of righteousness. So for all those people that are looking as Asmodeus as a patron deity in PFO, you have plenty of things to fight over. You have plenty of ideology to choose from, and some of that ideology that people are already participating in is they believe in tyranny and slavery, which is some core ideology. And eventually in this game, there is going to be some mechanics to have slaves. So there is a lot here for various evil organizations, and maybe even lawful neutral organizations to draw from when choosing Asmodeus as your deity. Now, on a deity that's completely and utterly different, Callistra. Callistra is the goddess of many faces, guises, including lust and revenge. She is held in especially high regard by elves, who often identify her moods and attitude with that of their people. She has a fondness for wasps that has earned her the title of Savored Sting. Now, Callistra is not only vengeful, but vindictive. When she's been wronged by another, she will take her time returning such disfavor and maneuvering in order to attain the best position from which to savor her retribution. Revenge is best served cold. She's also known for her trysts with various mortals and immortals and all throughout the galaxy and beyond. There are near legendary accounts of just these crazy events in which she found herself in with some man somewhere. And there is conflicting sources on all these different extracurricular activities, so to speak. And the tales are really hard to actually figure out if they're based in truth or fantasy, but everyone knows they happen. Now, with relationships, Callistra is seen as a desirable partner by a number of her divine contemporaries. And you can even find information about her in a lot of other holy texts within the core pantheon. And one of these holy texts talks about Caden Kalian's rise to divinity as a result of a failed attempt to win the attention of Callistra, who is said to have denied the Sellsword's advances on the basis of his mortality at that very moment. Now, Callistra's faithful can be found all across Golarion. And the alignments in which can support Callistra as the patron deity are chaotic good, neutral, chaotic neutral, and chaotic evil. She focuses on lust and vengeance. And these actually have taken root in quite a lot of places, including the River Kingdoms. River Kingdoms is actually a very focused place for Callistra. The followers of the Lady in the Room fulfill varied roles whenever they are encountered. Basically anything from spying to prostitution and beyond, but always in support of their goddess's mercurial nature. So you'll see a lot of, if you want to play as someone supporting Callistra, trickery and mischief are some key tenets there, some key ideology for you to use. And encounters the flesh and knowledge that is both secret or dangerous. And the pursuit of these goals can often lead to essentially her faithful to wander the world in order to achieve some aspect of what she focuses on. So if you want to pick her, it's some very interesting gameplay you can get yourself into. Her favorite weapon is the whip. Her symbol is the 3 daggers. Sacred animal is the wasp, and she loves black and yellow. Now on to Caden Kalian. So, Caden Kalian is the accidental god. And by what I mean by the accidental god is there is a test of the Starstone. The test of the Starstone is a test that anyone can take by attempting to reach the Starstone in the Starstone Cathedral at the center of Absalon's Ascendant Court District. Now, this is far, far south of the River Kingdoms. But this test has been pivotal for hundreds of thousands of years in creating 4 deities: Eridan, Norgabur, Caden Kalian, and Aomade. So this crazy, hard test is at the center of a deadly maze containing traps, guardians, and wards, and no one really knows the nature of any of this because it constantly changes. And it is in this crazy, extra-dimensional sort of world of its own. And the few who pass become demigods, while those who fail eventually die. Although, the 4 I mentioned, those 4 came out as divine gods. And Caden Kalian is called the accidental god because he took this test while drunk. He was sort of challenged in taking this test, and as you heard earlier, some people think Callistra had something to do with this. But the main story goes that he was extremely drunk and challenged. Yes, Pino. He was extremely drunk and challenged into taking this test. And, well, he did it. He went right in there, marched right into the district, right into the giant building that houses the Starstone, and 3 days later, he came out on the other side as a deity. Now, before he became this deity, Caden Kalian was a Taldane sellsword and a freedom fighter working out of Absalom. He so strongly believed that no man should hold power over another, that he lost tons and tons of jobs that would violate his principles. And his refusal to compromise his ideals was well known as much as his love for drink. The combination of two resulted in less than favorable reputation, though, as you know, it also led him into ascension to the pantheon. Now, since he's become an immortal, he's basically the exact same as he was before he went in. He holds adventure and freedom in high regard. He opposes tyranny and oppression, and he accepts duels all the time. He loves to duel. And he has on several occasions killed other demigods in duels. He's basically badass with a rapier. Now, he makes it a point of avoiding trouble with his peers as much as possible. And by peers, I mean other gods. Kalen particularly favors Desna, Sarenrae, and Shaylin. And obviously has been known to keep the company of Callistra from time to time. He finds Aristil, Abadar, Gozray, and Auri tolerable to be around, but difficult to agree with. And, well, his good friend is Torag. And Torag is the dwarven deity. And him and Torag, they love ale. And it's kind of funny because Kane Kalen will actually go out on these legendary drinking runs with Torag, and they'll even compare human and dwarven brews. So they're very, very fun and very kind of just free and fun to be around. And this is part of his portfolio: is freedom, ale, wine, and just bravery. So King Kalian is the embodiment of having a good time. Now, the Church of King Kalian focus on freedom and drink as the pillars of their church. And they're free to seek their own means of venerating the drunken hero. And it's not uncommon for followers to take part in events involving one or both of these. And that actually comes down to a lot of his followers are brewers. And there's often massive drinking events or creation of drinks and spirits. And to actually create your own ale is considered noble and holy. So despite the promotion of drink, though, the faithful draw a line between drinking for merriment and drinking to excess. The latter is seen as an abuse of one of the deity's favorite things, and as such is frowned upon. Similarly, although the faith of King Kalian... Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. So the faithful of King Kalian are known to actively seek out danger and adventure. And they recognize the need to withdraw when a situation turns sour. What it comes down to is stupidity does not equal bravery, and bravery should never be sought at the bottom of the keg. The majority of those who follow King Kalian are simple people who seek simple pleasures in life. Those who brew alcohol, um, those who partake in essentially partying but not overdoing it, adventure seeking to promote goodness, often find a sense of kinship with the deity, and their goals of freedom and adventure, um, just mirroring those of the god. His clergy are mostly clerics, a small smattering of druids and bards. There's very rarely any instances where there's actually any structure to the religion. It's a very loose hierarchy. And what's funny is the priests of King Kalen are often barkeeps, freedom fighters, and adventurers, traveling adventurers. So, if you want to focus on King Kalen, first off, his alignments are neutral good, and chaotic neutral. And there is plenty for you to focus on in this game. Adventuring is huge. There are taverns all over the place, and eventually we're going to have alcoholic beverages. So, if you are role playing, Cain Kalen is a very interesting deity to choose, specifically in PFO, specifically in the River Kingdoms, where freedom is such a huge pillar of the culture. Last, his favorite weapon is the rapier. His symbol is obviously the tankard. A sacred animal is a hound, and his favorite colors are silver and tan. Okay, so the next deity will be probably my last deity to talk about today. And every week for the next probably 3 or 4 weeks, I'll talk about another 4 or 5 deities. Now, the last that we're talking about today is Desna. Desna was one of the first deities. But while those like Ahis and Asmodeus were tasking themselves with creating various parts of Golarion at that point in time, she spent her time creating parts of the heavens. Desna is the ancient goddess of freedom and luck. And in her earliest days, the god Kirchanis, an enemy of the goddess Lamashtu, was her mentor. And what ended up happening is that Lamashtu laid a trap for Kirchanis and stripped him of his beast domain, literally ripping it from his godly essence. And as he died, he gifted Desna his domain of travel. And since he's traveled the planes in the world, in the various worlds, and always at every corner she opposes both oppression and Lamashtu. And spreading her word, she spreads her word while making an effort to experience new wonders when and where she can. Desna is absolutely opposed to Lamashtu. And she actually she wishes to reclaim the domain of beasts from Lamashtu because of that ancient treachery. Caden Kalin is known to be a suitor of hers, but she keeps aloof of most gods. And past traumas and her desire for freedom lead her into fewer interactions. I'm sorry, 1 second, please. Sorry about that. So, sorry about in real life. So, going on, she is known to have good relations with Saren, Ray, and Shaylin, and she opposes both Rovagog and Zonkathan for control of the night, which she wishes to be a time of wonder and beauty. Unlike most of the other deities, Desna has no true realm in the great beyond. There are rumors of a place that she actually visited on the material plane, far beyond Golarion, called the Sevenfold Cynosure. Now, Desna is sort of worshipped as the Varisian goddess. And she's often described as this, beautiful elven woman with butterfly wings containing all the beauties of the clear night sky. Now, the Church of Desna has very few temples to its name, and its priests rarely settle in a single location. Some of her core followers you can find mostly in Varisia, in caravans, and out in the wilderness. River Kingdoms, again, is another location you can find the clergy. There are a couple temples in the River Kingdoms dedicated to Desna, since she is the goddess of travel and journeys. Now, scouts and sailors and those who travel for the sake of traveling make up a large amount of her following. Though her domain of luck also makes her a favorite deity among gamblers and thieves. So clerics are the main focus of her clergy, but there's also bards who participate quite a lot. And specifically in the River Kingdoms, the Gnomon Centaurs, which we may or may not see in PFO, are a huge, big worshiper of Desna, and they call her the Mother Moon. Now, for those looking to worship Desna, she's chaotic good. So if you're neutral good, chaotic good, or chaotic neutral, she is the deity for you, potentially. Her favorite weapon is a star knife. Her symbol and sacred animal is a butterfly, and her colors are blue and white. So, if you are interested in traveling, if you're interested in, sightseeing, anything to do with dreams and stars and luck and just exploration in general with MPFO, Desna is the god that you might consider as your patron deity. All right, thank you, everybody. That concludes my first session of the Deities of Golarion. I am Cheatle with the Empyrean Order. I represent Brighthaven. And thank you all for your time.